Well, I have a health update for you, so let's talk about it and see what the results are. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Ian, known as WanderBeard, and in today's video, as promised, I have a health update for you. This kind of goes back a little bit, so I'll kind of give you a bit of the outline of kind of how this all started, how long it's been, and what the information is that I got back. Good news, bad news, what does this mean for the future of my trips? So as you can see, it is a much nicer here today than it was a week ago. Yes, exactly 7 days ago today, I was standing outside in a winter jacket in snow and the ground was covered and it was cold. And now here it is today, June 4th, exactly 1 week later. It is sunny, about 21 degrees Celsius, and it is beautiful. I'm outside in a t-shirt and shorts and couldn't be happier, to be honest. This spring has been, it's been pretty miserable, I'm not gonna lie. Cold, windy, lots of rain, all that sort of stuff. But we are now into June, so hopefully that means that some of the nicer weather is coming. So I'll give you a bit of a background on today's update. And before I do that, I'd like to even go back a bit further and talk about why, in retrospect, as I have learned over the last few years, that taking care of yourself is extremely important. So I thought what I would do first is kind of give you a bit of a background on where this all came up from and kind of talk about that a little bit. And then before that though, I'd like to kind of talk to you a little bit my own health going back even farther. The 10 years or so leading up to when I traveled, I wasn't taking very good care of myself. I was working a desk job. The last 3 to 4 years of it, I was working from home during COVID. We had closed our office, so everyone was working remotely. And what that led to was a lifestyle where I sat at a desk all day, all night. My work life and my personal life balance went out the window. I was working officially 8 or 9 hours a day, but in reality, I was working probably closer to, 10 to 12 hours a day, sometimes even more. As a result of that, I really wasn't working out. I wasn't doing any kind of even walking anywhere, really. I was making, bad health choices in terms of what I was eating, how much of it I was eating, and you do that for a few years in a row, or almost 10 years in my case, that adds up pretty quick. In 2012, I was actually making good progress. I was getting healthier. I had recently run a 5K road race for the first time in my life, or at least the first time since, junior high school back in the late 80s when I would run cross-country meets for school. But to go from that high in 2012 to where I was, 10 years later was quite drastic. I ended up gaining over 150 pounds during those 10 years. I don't actually know because I just stopped checking after a while, but it was certainly more than that even. I was struggling to get upstairs. Couldn't really walk anywhere. Everything was just exhausting all the time. On top of all that, as I've talked about in other videos, mentally I was very fatigued. I had a lot of anxiety and stress around work and trying to find that balance that was quickly eroding. All these things compounded into just one big mess. In 2022, I met with a doctor online. I don't have a family doctor personally, so they have a virtual program set up here where you can speak to a doctor over a video conference, talk to them about how you're feeling, and then if necessary, they can arrange in-person stuff. So at that time I said, well, let's at least start with blood work, that whole bit. And when they got that back, they said, well, unfortunately, you had developed type 2 diabetes. And that was a direct result of my poor choices over the previous decade. It was a real wake-up call to me in some ways, but at the time, it also further escalated my self-destructive nature. I kind of felt like, well, I've already destroyed myself, so let's just continue to do that. And so for another year or so, I really wasn't great to myself. But during that time, I also realized that I couldn't keep doing this forever. I couldn't continue on the path that I was on, or I wasn't going to make it another 5 years. Either I would die from a heart attack, or something stress related, or poor health decisions, or whatever. There's all kinds of problems start to arise when you don't take care of yourself. So at that point, I realized that something needed to change. I decided that when I was going to turn 50 in 2024, I was going to have enough money saved and debts paid off that I could go on my trip, that I could go see the world, do all the things I wanted to do, and get out of that cycle that I had felt like I was stuck in for far too long. At the end of 2023, unfortunately, work, stress, anxiety, all those sorts of things caught up with me. And at the end of 2023, around Christmas time, I finally decided I had had enough. I was really on the edge of something really bad happening. I was very unhealthy. My mental health was very poor. My cat, Oishi, who I had had for almost 19 years, passed away a couple months before that. And she was sort of the last tether that I had to, keeping myself going. So I decided that at the end of 2023 that I was done. I was done about 5.5 months early, but it was time. It just couldn't keep doing what I was doing. So as I talked about in other videos, I had a plan. I had executed on that plan. I had saved some money for a couple of years. I had paid off my debts. And then I had started to sell off the things that I owned, the things that I felt like were holding me down, those physical assets. And then I went off and started my journey. And it was great, and it continues to be great. In the last 2-ish or so years now, I've managed to lose over 100 of those pounds. I have managed to walk almost 3,000 kilometers in those 2 years. And I think just generally, I just feel more alive, I feel mentally very clear. I'm very calm. I feel like I've been given a second chance. And so that's really what a lot of this is all about for me, is rediscovering myself, rediscovering the things that I love, and running with it for as long as I can. You can see the bumblebees are hard at work here in the forget-me-not flowers in the front yard. So anyway, some people will ask, well, what are you doing about your type 2 diabetes? Well, I've been fortunate in that I think through the combination of just eating better and doing a lot more walking and, physical activity, I've been able to maintain a lifestyle that has allowed me to continue on without the need of, prescriptions and things like that, which I tried for a while and were working great. But I also found that just changing my lifestyle really helped me as well. I've had a couple times recently where I've run some of those, glucose sensors and those sorts of things, and they've been great. Everything is pretty well back to a normal level, which is great to see that I can continue to do what I'm doing and improve my overall health and everything else. So that's been great. As I said, I feel like I've come a long way in the last couple of years, that I've made great strides in improving my health, but I know also that I have much more that I want to do. So fast forward to February of this year, February 2026. I was down in Nicaragua at the time, wandering around Ometepe Island for the second time and just having a great time, and I was feeling great. Wasn't having any issues whatsoever. And then one day I just kind of went for a walk one day for breakfast and felt a little twinge, a little pain, if you will, in my right ankle. And I was like, huh, that's weird. That's new. You know, I mean, I've had the usual aches and pains, knees, and all the wonderful things that happen as you get older. But this was different, and it felt different. So I just kind of pushed through it, I guess. Like I didn't ignore it. Obviously, I couldn't ignore it because of the how it felt. But I was just willing to say, okay, well, I will worry about that down the road if it doesn't go away. Well, it didn't go away. And so, you know, I finished my time in Nicaragua, I finished Costa Rica, I finished Panama with this ankle that was, you know, bothering me pretty well every day. Flew to Mexico, hung out with my brother's family, came home for my dad's birthday, where I'm still at today, and it was still bothering me. So again, I connected with the virtual care here in my province, spoke to a doctor, and they said, well, let's get you an x-ray to get it looked at, just to make sure there's nothing serious or something that would require surgery. But I didn't know. I mean, I was unsure really of what was going to happen or what the results were going to look like. So last week, I went and got an x-ray. They actually took 3 or 4 x-rays of the ankle from different angles and things like that to have it checked out. I was hoping to get copies of those pictures to show in the video here today, but I haven't received them yet. I've requested them, but it's, you know, still not here. But that's fine. I received the results back on Tuesday, and it was mostly good. So the results of the x-ray were basically a few different things. There was 5 different points mentioned in the results documentation that I received, and I'll kind of talk about each one of them. Some of them are pretty brief, pretty simple. The first one was that there's no break. There's nothing broken in my ankle, like bone-wise or anything like that, that would indicate where this pain was coming from, which was great, because that was one of the things I was worried about the most, was that something was broken and I would need a cast and all those sorts of things. The second point said that there was actually some evidence of a previous injury in my ankle. And what it basically said was that there looked like there had been a sprain at some point in the ankle that was severe enough to actually break off a piece of the bone from when the tendon got stretched. It has since healed over that little break, and you know, they said there was no evidence that that was continuing to be a problem today. Pretty sure that that happened when I got off a bus. When I was living in Halifax at the time, I slipped on some ice and did a Charlie Brown, if you will, onto the ground, and I couldn't walk on that ankle for about 3 days because of the sprain. It was pretty painful, and it's not the first time. I've sprained both of my ankles multiple times over the years through a combination of clumsiness or whatever. I believe my left ankle I've sprained now almost, I think, 6 or 7 times, and my right ankle 2 or 3 times. So anyway, so I've dealt with those, whatever, that was fine. The third thing they checked was what's called, I believe how you pronounce it is mortise. It's where the leg bone connects to the ankle, so make sure that that socket is aligned and, you know, structurally sound and all that sort of stuff. And that was all okay. They said there was no evidence there of any problems, that all looked good and stable, which was great. That's great news, because that could be something that would be quite serious as well. The fourth thing they mentioned made me laugh a little bit. It said that the soft tissues around the ankle looked grossly unremarkable, was the terminology they used. And I laughed, and I was kind of like, well, that just sounds like I'm boring. But it's actually good news. What that means is that the soft tissues, the tendons, the cartilage, all that sort of stuff is all okay. And, you know, as far as stability and being able to walk and being able to do all the things I want to do, you know, that's not going to cause any of the problems. The fifth thing, the final thing on the list, however, there was a small red flag. What they have discovered is that on my heel, there are 2 small bone spurs. There's one on the bottom of my heel that's developed, and there's one on the outside of my right ankle that has also developed. They're roughly the same size. It looks like they've developed around the same time, and that is what's causing the pain. Not the bone spurs themselves, but when the tendons or, other parts in there rub up against those sharp bone spurs that have developed, that's where I get the pain from. So I thought about that and I said, well, that makes sense. Depending on when, I was putting my foot down, sometimes I'd feel pain underneath. If I was twisting my ankle slightly one way or the other, sometimes I get a little bit of a pain there. So that clearly lines up with the pains that I've been feeling. I guess, first of all, I guess that means I'll never get drafted for a war with bone spurs, but whatever, that's fine. The second thing is that it's manageable, and that's good news. I did some research and I talked to a couple of people about this after the fact, and they basically said that, using proper footwear, doing some stretching exercises, those types of things, the pain can be managed, mitigated, whatever word you want to use for it. And you just kind of continue on with your life with this here as it is. And, that's just one of those things that happens, as you get older, or in my case, where you go from doing nothing for 10 years to suddenly picking up almost 40 pounds worth of backpacks and going on a walk for 2 years. I think that repeated motion of the walking with the bags and, all that sort of stuff after doing nothing for so long just kind of helped aggravate this to the point where it developed the bone spurs. So I guess in some ways my trip has kind of been a double-edged sword a little bit. I wouldn't trade anything that I've done so far or any of my future plans for anything. This is just a little side effect of the result of, the last years of my life and all of the poor decisions I made leading up to that. So the recommendations are basically to use some soft-soled insoles in your shoes, ones with gel cups on the heels. They kind of help give you some extra spring in your step so that when you put your foot down, there's not so much impact on the heel. Ironically enough, I have a pair of very cheap foam style, almost like the material you see in Crocs, pair of flip-flops that I bought back in Mexico. They were like $5. And I've been wearing those now for 4 or 5 days and I've had zero pain, which I find really funny because it's literally the cheapest thing I have. But I think just the way that they're made and the cushion that's in the heel of them, they've been fantastic. So I've been wearing those around pretty well everywhere that I can. Been too cold out some days to wear them, but around the house and those types of things, they've been perfect for that. So what does this mean going forward? Well, it means that I can confidently say that I am not changing my plans. I was waiting for this result before I sort of started making plans for things because I didn't want to make a whole bunch of plans and then have something happen and I couldn't do it. I'd be heartbroken. I'd be really upset with myself, those types of things. So, I've kind of waited, and with this result back, that's fantastic news. Second to that, I've also started an exercise program. I get some not so nice comments sometimes that, oh, you need to exercise more and, oh, you need to lose weight. I'm fully aware of that. I don't need you to tell me that. So I'm working with a wellness expert who's really into things like yoga, stretching, exercising, all that sort of stuff. And we had a meeting last week and we developed a plan for an exercise routine that I've started already. Yesterday actually was the first day. And I think it's going to be really great. It's about 45 minutes to an hour of various stretches, exercises, yoga poses, those types of things to kind of help in everything that I'm going to need. This upcoming trip, where I'm going to go through India and then go through Nepal and do the Everest Base Camp hike and then continue onward overland from there into Southeast Asia, is a long trip. There'll be a lot of walking, a lot of mountains involved, and I'm fully aware that I need to be in better shape than what I am today. I've come a long way. I still have a long way to go, but at least I feel comfortable with the position I've set myself up in. And that's one of the things that I've always talked about in my videos to you, is that, if you want to do something, make a plan, figure out the steps you need to do to get there, and execute on it. And stick to the plan, which is the one thing that I think most people trip up on. People get these really great ideas, and then they get tripped up or frustrated when one step doesn't work, and then they just stop. Well, don't stop. Keep moving forward. Keep making plans. You know, for me, it was, okay, I need to get this looked at. Let's find a doctor. Let's get it x-rayed. Let's get the results. Okay, now that I have the results, what are the steps I need to do to protect it so that when I go forward from here, what are the kind of things I need to do? And so that's where I'm at. I feel pretty good, to be honest. I was really worried that there was something else worse than that, I guess. Maybe a break or a tear in a tendon or, you know, something like that, that would really prevent me from being able to do what I want. This does not do that. This is just another thing that I will have to, you know, manage. But I feel confident that I can manage it properly. So that's the update that I have for you today. It's you know, as I said, fairly good news. You know, it could have been a lot worse. I think that I've accepted that at now 52 years old, you know, these things are going to continue to crop up. But I think I can help mitigate some of that or reduce the risk of some of that by continuing to work on my health and my growth and all of those types of things. And I encourage you to do the same. So if you are feeling like you're stuck in a rut, or you know, you're spending your days not being active and making bad food choices, or just not sure what to do next, try to change one thing at a time. Maybe if you're eating poor meals all day, try and make a healthy breakfast first. And then maybe in a few weeks, you add in a healthy lunch or some healthy snacks. Maybe you go for a short walk at first. I didn't get all the way through my body weight exercise routine yesterday. You know, I was supposed to go through all of the exercises 3 times each. I managed twice. And then I felt a little pain in my knee and in my wrist, and I was like, okay, well that's good for today. Next time I will try and complete some of them 3 times. And then eventually I'll get to completing all of them 3 times or 4 times. You know, or I'll extend the length of the exercises, or I'll add additional exercises on other days, like going for walks on my off days. It's all about making progress, and some of those steps will definitely be smaller than others, but it's better than moving backwards. So just keep that in mind if you're looking for a way to kind of improve things in your life. And I'm not talking about just specifically exercise. This could be anything in your life. Just make those small steps, make those small changes, and eventually they'll become even bigger changes and you won't even realize it. Anyway, that's all for today. I just wanted to share with you this update, as I promised on Tuesday that I would give you some information on what's going on. I appreciate all the support and all the comments and all the love that I have felt from you who are watching my videos. It really does mean a lot to me. It really motivates me to continue to do what I'm doing. I think there's a lot of people out there who are just looking for advice or help or recommendations, or to see that someone else is doing it too. Well, I hope that, you know, some of these videos have helped you feel like you're not alone, and that you can make the changes that you want and better your life for you, because you're the only one that gets to live your life. So make the most of it. If you like this video, leave a like or a comment down below just to let me know that you were here. Let me know your thoughts on the update and your own plans for maybe making some changes in your life. As we go forward from here, I'll be providing additional updates on my plans. I think it'd be kind of fun to kind of show you some of the steps that I'm doing along the way here to kind of get ready for my next trip, because it's such a larger trip and, you know, a much more physical trip than the last one was even. I think it'll be interesting to kind of show some of that along the way. So let me know your thoughts on that. If you would like to support me further, there are a few different ways you can do that, of course. I do have a Patreon set up, A special shout out to all my Patreon subscribers. I really appreciate all your support that you've given me, and you know, it's there on the screen. If you want to check it out, you can look me up on Patreon as WanderBeard. The couple donation links here on the screen also for PayPal and Bitcoin. You're under no obligation, by the way, to do any of this, and I'm not pressuring or asking you to. I'm just saying that if you'd like to, it's there, but don't feel like you have to. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I realized yesterday that I'm quickly approaching 40,000 subscribers, which is amazing to me. I'm planning on doing a live Q&A for my 40,000 subscribers, so keep that in mind. So if you have friends or family who you think would like some of this material, you know, share my channel with them. The faster we get to 40,000 subscribers, the faster we can do that live Q&A. And remember, life is short. Wander. And I will see you in the next video.